Giri Baradhari Gopi Janaballabha Giri Baradhari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Haribo Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Haribo Nitai Gaur Haribo Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya Sotara Satashi Shrimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBD Founder Sharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya Astotara Satashi Shrimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ananta Gauri Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Name Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Gopadhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Brihat Madanga Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru Garanga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, reading from the Bhagavad-gita, chapter 2, text 40. Very famous verse. Nihabhikamo nashtosti Ratyavayo navidyate Swapamapi asya dharmasya Trayate mahato bhaya Nihabhikrama nastosti pratyavayo navidyate Swapamapi asya dharmasya Trayate mahato bhaya Nihabhikramo nastosti pratyavayo navidyate Swapam apiyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhaya. Okay, word for word translation. Na, there is not. Iha, in this yoga. Sorry. Abhikrama, in endeavoring. Nasa, loss. Asti, there is. Pratyavaya, diminution. Na, never. Vidyate, there is. Su alpam, a little. Api, although. Asya, of this. Dharmasya, occupation. Trayate, releases. Mahata, from very great. Bhayat, danger. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Purport. Activity in Krishna consciousness, or acting for the benefit of Krishna without expectation of sense gratification, is the highest transcendental quality of work. Even a small beginning of such activity finds no impediment, nor can that small beginning be lost at any stage. Any work begun on the material plane has to be completed. Otherwise, the whole attempt becomes a failure. But any work begun in Krishna consciousness has a permanent effect, even though not finished. The performer of such work is therefore not at a loss, even if his work in Krishna consciousness is complete. Sorry, read that sentence again. The performer of such work is therefore not at a loss, even if his work in Krishna consciousness is incomplete. 1% done in Krishna consciousness bears permanent results, so that the next beginning is from the point of 2%. Whereas in material activity, without a 100% success, there is no profit. Ajamil performed his duty in some percentage of Krishna consciousness, but the result he enjoyed at the end was 100%. By the grace of the Lord. There is a nice verse in this connection in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 5th chapter, text number 17. Takvas Vadharmam Charanam Bhujam Harer, Bhajana Pakvo Ta Patet Tato Yadi. Yatra Kva Babadram Abud Amushikim, Kovarta Apto Bhajatam Swadharmata. If someone gives up his occupational duties and works in Krishna consciousness, and then falls down on account of not completing his work, what loss is there on his part? And what can one gain if one performs his material activities perfectly? Or, as the Christians say, what profiteth a man if he gain the whole world yet suffers the loss of his eternal soul? Material activities and their results end with the body. But work in Krishna consciousness carries a person again to Krishna consciousness, even after the loss of the body. At least one is sure to have a chance in the next life of being born again as a human being, either in the family of a great cultured Brahmana or in a rich aristocratic family that will give one a further chance for elevation. That is the unique quality of work done in Krishna consciousness. Om Gana Timidam Dasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lavita Shri Vishakam Vikamscha Hey Krishna Karana Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jigapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, Bhagavad-gita, Papa would sometimes refer to the Bhagavad-gita as the ABCs of spiritual knowledge. It means it's the beginning. It's just beginner stuff. But it may be, maybe it is beginner stuff from a Vedic perspective, but still it's, for many people, this is very elevated knowledge. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Just this morning, I was with two devotees, maybe some of you know him, Satchidananda, disciple of Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and Prema Sankirtan. And we were distributing books in a very Jewish area of Los Angeles, Pico and Beverly. It's just kind of like South Beverly Hills, and it's right by this big, concentration of Orthodox Jews. So it just worked out that we was there. And it was Saturday. Today is Saturday, so that's the Jewish Sabbath. So we were going from door to door, basically, and we were all seeing all these people dressed in suits, and at least the men were dressed in black and suits with white shirts and black hats, and the women were wearing dresses down to kind of practically the ankles, and they had the kids, and they were really, it was impressive, and they, without me saying anything, both Prema Sankirtan and Satchidananda, they were very impressed. They were like, wow, this is like, because these people lived, and here they're living in this nice area of Los Angeles, and there they are on Saturday and the Sabbath. They're out there. They're going to their temple, synagogue, and they're coming back, and it's obviously that they're taking the whole thing seriously. They really have an identity, a Jewish identity. So I was from that background actually, so I was kind of also impressed, and I was feeling like, wow, we're pretty far out. I mean, I wasn't kind of so aware of that. Anyway, when we finished distributing, I looked up on the internet about afterlife Judaism, and I found what I thought was the case, and when I read, confirmed it, that there's practically not much information about an afterlife. So here you have a religion, but without, it's not a big important part of the religion, what happens after you die. And I was so, wow. And I was thinking to myself, like, how is that possible? I mean, I think that's kind of like one of the first things you'd be concerned about. Anyway, one thought that occurred to me was, cultural conditioning is very powerful. Even people have truth, just kind of like, there's a lot of things that motivate a human being. There was this psychologist, Abraham Maslow, and he had this theory about like there's a hierarchy of needs, and before you could get to the top of the pyramid, so to speak, which was self-actualization, you have to be able to work through some of these lower things, like food, clothing, and shelter, and feeling of belonging, a sense of self, importance, et cetera, et cetera. And so I wasn't critical. I didn't feel critical. I wasn't thinking like, yeah, these people are really a big illusion, because I know it's. I've experienced how it in myself as well, that we're conditioned, and the conditioning is so powerful that sometimes, knowledge, not sometimes, most of the time, knowledge is smacking us right in the face, but because of our material condition, we're unable to appreciate it the way it should be. And there's that famous pastime between, I think it's Yamaraj and Maharaj Yudhisthira. Yeah, where it's Yudhisthira was, he went to, the Pandavas were, I think, in exile in the forest, and they went, one of them, I can't remember who went first, if it was Arjuna or Bhima or whatever, they went to some lake and they tried to drink the water there, and they got poisoned and they died. And then the next one, and finally Maharaj Yudhisthira went there, and the lake was protected by a yaksha or something. It was actually Yamaraj. And he said, if you could answer these questions, then, I'll bring all your brothers back to life and like that. So one of the questions was, what is the most amazing thing? What is the most amazing thing? And Maharaj Yudhisthira very sagaciously answered the question. The most amazing thing is that people are going to the abode of Yamaraj every day, one after the other, and still everybody's thinking, I'm not going to die. So he was just, reflecting there on the great power and the influence of the illusory energy. And Yamaraj appreciated his answers, and he brought his brothers back to life. But so that's there. I know, just like, I had, an example of that from just myself just the other day, but I won't even mention it. But so we have to, that it's not like you become free from all material concerns and conditioning before, and then in a nice, peaceful, tranquil, state of mind, you're able to take up Krishna consciousness. No, it just doesn't. It doesn't work like that. In other words, even why we have to fight. Prabhupada would say that. I think it's even in the introduction to the Bhagavad-gita. One has to fight to remember Krishna, while living in this world. It's not like all the material desires go away first, and then I'll take the Krishna consciousness. No, even in the midst of all that, we have to, try to push forward. And Lord Chaitanya, he prayed in the Shishashtakam, Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim, Kavitam Va Jagarisha Kamaye. He's saying, oh my Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I like to translate that to, I don't want leadership. Because for some reason, when I hear that phrase, I don't want any number of followers. Why would I want any number of followers? But leadership, everybody's after leadership. So he doesn't want that. He doesn't want leadership. He doesn't want women. He doesn't want wealth. He wants devotional service, birth after birth. And he's making a statement there of his intention. Like it's it's like almost like a mission statement. It's in the statement of his intention, a statement of his resolve, of his, of what he's going for, not necessarily a statement of what he's already accomplished or achieved. That's a way in which I appreciate it. And then the very next verse is a further statement. He's making a further statement where he says, Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishame bhavambudo kripaya tavapada pankaja stituduli sadvasam vachintaya. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other, I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Kripaya tavapada pankaja, by your mercy, please pick me up from this ocean of death, stituduli sadvasam vachinta, and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. In other words, what is he praying for when you stop and think about it? He's saying, please pick me up from this ocean of birth and death. So what is it? He's praying for spiritual upliftment. It's a prayer by Lord Chaitanya. And he's showing you, giving the example of the perfect devotee, and he's praying for spiritual upliftment, and specifically, he's praying to be removed from the cycle of birth and death and reinstated in his eternal constitutional position of devotional service. In other words, we shouldn't get what's the word thrown off by the imagery, when you have to meditate on some of these prayers and things, and really think it to yourself. What's the essence here? What's to appreciate? Too often, at least for myself, we can get sidetracked by the language. In other words, we're a lot of the things we've been introduced to in Krishna consciousness are very cultural and philosophically specific. I'll give you an example. Just like every morning we chant the Gurvastikam prayers, and there's phrases in there like the spiritual masters receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just like the cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish the spiritual masters, extinguish the blazing fire of material existence, the spiritual, etc. You see, and there's ideas and imagery that we're not used to. It's not part of the Western culture. It's not the way we were, used to hearing about glorification of God or spiritual life. And so sometimes, at least for me, it just kind of goes, shh. I'm saying it, but I'm kind of like, well, it doesn't really hit me as like, the words that the ways in which I was used to hearing those kind of subject matters dealt with. But that's like, it's sort of like you have to be able to go beyond that and appreciate the essence of what's going on there. Like I was just trying to do in that prayer, to make it more meaningful for myself, because these are very meaningful statements, like, the Shishashtakam, that's only 8 things Lord Chaitanya left in writing. So even I'll give you an example of, we refer to Srila Prabhupada as his divine grace. And I just realized the other day, I never actually stopped to think about, what does that mean? What's a divine grace? So I looked up in the, under, not the dictionary, but I guess I Googled it, divine grace, and I found this interesting definition. It says it's a theological term present in many religions, and it has been defined as the divine influence which operates in humans to regenerate and sanctify, to inspire virtuous impulses, and impart strength to endure trial and resist temptation, and as an individual virtue or an excellence of divine origin. So I was thinking, yeah, well, that's Prabhupada. When I read that, I thought, wow, that's a pretty good description of Prabhupada. He was a person who generated, who had a divine influence on his disciples, on people who were receptive to him, and he regenerated and sanctified their consciousness. He inspired virtuous impulses, and he those who took shelter of the teachings, the knowledge he was giving, they got strength to endure trial and resist temptation. So I thought, wow, okay, it gave me a better appreciation of what, when I say now, of what divine grace means. And now when I, say that phrase, His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta, it has more meaning for me as a result of doing that. So I think that's a good thing for devotees to do, to actually think about the stuff that we're doing on a regular daily basis, and try to, what does it mean? We have to be careful not to get caught up in just mechanically repeating these things, and just not like going deeply into it. I mean, for example, Prabhupada, in the last lecture he gave in 1977, this is the last lecture he gave to the body of devotees, which was Mayapur 77 at the Mayapur festival. And he said that he was talking about the Hare Krishna mantra, and he basically gave as a definition of the Hare Krishna mantra that fifth Shashastakam prayer, that, O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I'm your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I fall into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. So, as I was just saying, for me, it's a prayer for spiritual upliftment. Lord Chaitanya is praying to Krishna for spiritual upliftment. So, and if in geometry, I mean, when I was in, I guess, fifth grade, I was taught geometry. One of the postulates was quantities equal to same equal quantities are equal to each other. So, if that is a prayer for spiritual upliftment, and if that is also the meaning of the Hare Krishna mantra, as Prabhupada said in that lecture he gave in 1977 in Mayapur, the last public lecture, then when you're chanting Hare Krishna, you're praying for spiritual upliftment. I mean, for me, that's kind of important to remember, because, in this material world, the current is we want material enjoyment. We're here because we want material enjoyment. It's like, I'll give you an example why this is important. When I went to Mayapur, I can't remember if it was the first time, whatever, when you jump in the Ganges River, one thing you notice pretty quickly is that there's a current. And if you don't try to swim upstream, you're going downstream. And I immediately kind of appreciate there's an analogy there. So life in the material world is like that, as a conditioned soul. If you're a conditioned soul in this material world, the default position is to desire sense gratification. It's just like that when you jump in the Ganges, the default position is you're going downstream. Unless you do something about it, you're going downstream. Unless you make a decision and a concerted effort to do something other than that, you're going downstream. So it's the same thing with trying to be Krishna conscious here, in the material world. Unless you make a decision, I want spiritual upliftment, then the natural, kind of thoughts and things that'll enter into your mind is desiring material enjoyment. So you actually have to make a decision. So, and that's why, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is so important, because, and that's why we've been given, as a tapasya, a quota of chanting, to chant a certain number of mantras, a certain number of rounds each day, because basically what we're doing, it's like you're swimming upstream. When you're chanting that Hare Krishna mantra, it's like the equivalent of, swimming upstream against the current. Because what you're chanting, what you're praying is, Krishna, please uplift me, please bless me with spiritual upliftment. Bestow your divine grace upon me. Bless me with spiritual upliftment. You're praying like that. And the thing is this, now, even somebody might not be conscious of that, but the mantra acts on such a subliminal level. It's the Hare Krishna mantra, the names of Krishna are non-different from Krishna himself. Nam Namakadi Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis, Tatarpita, Nija Sarva Shaktis. The holy name of Krishna is non-different from Krishna himself. So when you're chanting that mantra, and Prabhupada would make this point on numerous occasions, even if you don't understand what you're doing with the purport, so to speak, it's acting. It's acting. It's actually acting upon your consciousness and bringing you, in sync with your real, original, pure consciousness of being an eternal servant of Krishna. So that's an important point. Okay, on a much lighter note, but it's kind of ties right in with everything. We're talking about chanting, and this is on the point of making a concerted effort. The mind, at least I've experienced this, okay? Hopefully you haven't experienced this, but I've experienced this. I've experienced over the years my mind coming up with all sorts of different excuses and reasons why I can't just sit down and chant in a concentrated, serious way. And recently, I don't know how exactly it happened, but it just sort of, as a result of a few different kind of situations that were going on simultaneously, I just got into the practice of sitting down and chanting. Now that might sound pretty strange to you because I've been in the movement closing in on 48 years, but I've always been like walking around, standing and pacing back and forth, or just shuffling my feet back and forth, or even going on extended japa walks. And recently I just got into, over the last few months, sitting down. And I found this, I started doing it first, and then I became aware of what was going on. This place where I chant, which I've talked about in the past. I'm not going to get into that aspect of it. But what I do is I put a rubber mat down and a styrofoam block, a lightweight styrofoam block that's about 4 to 6 inches high. And I sit on that cross-legged. And I just found that, each day, with each day, I was just I was getting more focused. And I was thinking, wait a second, it seems like, wow, this is really very effective. And then I remembered Krishna said something about this in the Bhagavad-gita. So I'll read that verse. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, to share it with everybody, because it's working so well for me that I wanted to share it with everybody, but also just to also emphasize how perfect this, the knowledge we're receiving is, that even like minute details, are significant, and it all helps. So anyway, Krishna says in chapter 6, text 11, he says, Sochau deshi patishtapya stiram ashanam atmana, nati yucharitam, nati nicham, chailagnya kudushotamam. Translation is, I'll read the word for word translation. Sochau is in a sanctified deshe, place, land, patishtapya, placing, stirdam, firm, asanam, seat, atmana, his own, not, ati, to, uchritam, high, nor, ati, to, nicham, low. And I thought, wow, that's what I'm doing. And it makes a difference. And just a little small detail like that. Krishna's saying here, the seat shouldn't be too low. Well, see, so if nothing's lower than the floor, see, right? If you're sitting right on the floor, that's as low as it comes. So, but Krishna says the seat shouldn't be too low. So to me, that's like, he's saying indirectly, your seat should be higher than the floor. because the floor is as low as it gets, so that would be too low. So anyway, I feel like pretty confident that you're supposed to be sitting in such a way that your back, your backside is elevated, not too high, not too low. And I noticed that I've been doing that, and it really helps. It really just makes it a lot more comfortable to sit like that, and you can just kind of forget about your body. I'm not losing any energy. I'm not using any energy to be sitting like that. And it feels like I'm kind of like getting energy, if anything. And then I found another verse in the Bhagavatam where Prabhupada referred to that. Well, he doesn't make a big deal out of it, but it seems like every little thing is perfect. So in this third canto, chapter 28, text 8, there's a description of the, once again, the Astanga Dhyana yoga system. So one of those verses, Krishna says, the translations, well, actually, this is Lord Kapila speaking. And he says, after controlling one's mind and sitting postures, one should spread a seat in a secluded and sanctified place. Sit there in an easy posture, keeping the body erect, and practice breath control. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, sitting in an easy posture is called swasti samasina. It is recommended in the yoga scripture that one should put the soles of the feet between the two thighs and ankles and sit straight, semicolon. That posture will help one to concentrate his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. See? So in other words, obviously, the goal is to concentrate one's mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but Prabhupada is acknowledging here that that'll help. That'll help. And that's what I'm experiencing. And that's why I wanted to share it with everybody, because it's helping. And I was really kind of like over the last pretty much week, I've just been marveling at like, wow, this is a science, I mean, the human body is meant for self-realization. And from these books, you get instructions, very detailed, specific instructions, exactly how to go about it. And then you might say, wait a second, whoa, that's another system of yoga. Yeah, it is. But, it's kind of like, it's got some good things in it. There's nothing wrong with that system of yoga. It's not the system of yoga that we can perform in this day and age to get self-realization. But, there's certain elements in it. This is specifically, this is one example of that. Prabhupada's acknowledging here that sitting like that will help one to concentrate the mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we're interested in concentrating the mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is helpful. It's helpful. And it's not just my speculation or anything or my sentiment. It's coming from Krishna and Prabhupada. And and it's not that far removed from what we're doing. After all, we are yogis. We're bhakti yogis. Devotees are bhakti yogis. So it's not like we're, sort of like completely divorced from the yoga system. There's so many different things we can take with benefit from those other systems of yoga. Well, specifically the Hatha or Astanga or Dhyana yoga system. The thing we have to be very careful of, and the pitfall is not that we should have to clearly understand it's not the system, it's not the prescribed system of yoga for this day and age. It's not something we can do to become self-realized. Because for instance, in that system of yoga, after asana comes pranayama, and then pratyahara. So forget about that. We can't do those things. It's kind of, for me, my dhyana and Astanga yoga goes this far. It starts off with yam and niyam. That's the 4 regulative principles. No illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling. That's the essence of all the yams and the niyams. And then asana, sitting in this easy position. And then everything beyond that is chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. I think we could take this much as bhakti yogis. We could take this much from the Dhyana or the Astanga yoga system. The do's and the don'ts, which are the essence of those is the 4 regulative principles. This, sitting in an easy posture, which Prabhupada says helps one concentrate the mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then beyond that, and this Prabhupada makes his point himself in his purports in the this third canto of chapter 28, Lord Kapil's instructions on devotional service. Beyond that, we're meant to just be concentrating. When you're in that easy posture, you're chanting Hare Krishna and you're concentrating on the mantra. And that is every bit as good, better than, trying to concentrate the mind on the Supreme Personality of God by those other methods. So anyway, I just want to kind of share that with everybody else. And, in general, there's this verse in the first canto of, I think it's 5th chapter of the Bhagavatam, where Narada Muni is preaching to Vyasadeva, and he says, "O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by the very same thing?" So this is, a way in which, so if you have an attraction for certain things, you kind of, you can dovetail it somehow or another in Christian service, and that's okay. That's a good thing. Okay, so let me kind of bridge on my next thought here. Well, one thing I was kind of reflecting upon this morning about and just kind of appreciating Krishna consciousness for, I came with this I guess thought or example came to my mind. I was thinking about, if somebody has a car, say somebody owns a car, does that mean they're a driver? Would you necessarily say that, because somebody owns a car, that they're a driver? No, you can't. You can't. Somebody could own a car and not be a driver. You couldn't necessarily call him a driver. To be called a driver, that person has to know how to operate that car. He has to know how to drive that car on the road. He has to be familiar with the laws, the rules and regulations. He has to have all that theoretical knowledge. Then he has to be able to demonstrate that he has that knowledge in a practical way. You have to be able to sit down in that car and drive it. And then even beyond that, you have to have a license. I wouldn't call somebody a driver until they had a license, basically, or at least they were in the process in driver's education, and they were in the process of learning how to drive that car, and they were demonstrating some ability to be able to drive the car safely and legally and effectively. Then I would say, oh yeah, you're a driver. You're not just the owner of a possessor of a car, but you're a driver. And I was thinking, well, my mind works in analogy. So there's a clear analogy here. So just like you wouldn't call somebody a driver just because they had a car, you can't call somebody a human being just because they have a human body. For a simple thing like driving, you have to, people have to be trained. You have to go to drive. I had to go to driver's education. I had to study the road code and take, written exams about the whole thing. And then I had to, go out with a driving instructor and be told, okay, you do this, but don't do that. You can't do this, but you should do that. And then, go for an exam, and you have to pass the written exam and the practical exam. Then you're a driver. So in the same way, there should be something like that in human society. It shouldn't be that just anybody is considered a human being. No, there should be training. There should be training. People, and this is what education, should be the real role of education. There should be how would you say, an agreement, a consensus of what are the standard things that a human being should be taught. Anyway, Krishna consciousness makes a great contribution to that. We have, so many, different ideas of what it is that a person should do as a human being and what they shouldn't do. The only problem is not agreement. Everybody will agree on what's involved in, learning how to how to operate a car and how to drive a car, but unfortunately, you won't get everybody agreeing on what it is that a human being should be or shouldn't be. So therefore, we have a lot of chaos in the world today. We have a lot of people going around that have human bodies, but they're not human beings. It's like a lot of people going around that they have a car, but they really don't know how to drive. That's my analogy there. But anyway, we have to, So as devotees, we can't be discouraged by that. We have to remember this is being a conditioned soul in the material world. It's like being in school. In school, you're in a grade and you have to some work you have to do. And if you do that work properly, then you get promoted. And if not, you stay at the same grade level. You could even get demoted. So in other words, it's just like getting educated in the material world is a multiple grade process. You have to go through multiple. It doesn't happen all in 1 year, so to speak. After 1 year, you get promoted and you're in the next grade and the next grade and the next grade and the next grade. So in the same way, Krishna consciousness is a multiple life educational program. We're in a particular grade, we're in a particular level right now, and we just have to be concerned to master the coursework for the grade we're in, so we can get promoted to the next grade. I mean, ideally, what we're shooting for is to go back to get out of the sort of the Maya rehab, which is what the material world is, essentially is. Like, you have a drug rehab or alcohol rehab. Well, this is a Maya rehab. So we have to get out of this Maya rehab, but it might not happen all in one go. It's like, as I said, not as I say, but as Prabhupada said, and it's mentioned many places in the books, that we've been in this material world for a long time. Before this creation, I've heard Prabhupada say, I've heard him say in the Bhagavad-gita, he says we've had millions and millions of births. And one place, in one lecture he gave in 1967 on the Chaitanya Charitamrita in New York, he said, many, many Brahma's lives have passed and still we are conditioned. So that's a long time. We've been in this material world for trillions and trillions and trillions of years. And I mean, even longer. And we have to just remind ourselves of that and use that information to stay serious about trying to progress in devotional service, trying to make whatever advancement we can. And this, getting back to today's verse of Neha Brikama Nastosti Pachavaya Navijite Swalpamapi Sagarma Shataya Tim Hatobia, that is cumulative. See, it's not like all or none. There's whatever advancement we make, that's Prabhupada says here. 1% done in Krishna consciousness bears permanent results, so that the next beginning is from the point of 2%. Whereas so that's an important point right there, that the performer of such work is never at a loss, even if his work in Krishna. So it's like making a deposit in the bank, and it keeps adding up. So if nothing, I mean, as I said, ideally, Prabhupada said once, he says, if you go to try to get like a perfect score, you'll get honors. If you go for honors, you'll get a pass. If you go for a pass, you may fail altogether. No, we should set our sights high and be, aspiring to finish up our business in this lifetime and get out of the cycle of birth and death and go back to the spiritual world. Definitely, we should be thinking like that. But at the same time, it's also, good to be thinking, well, let me rack up as much progress as I can in this life. So even if I don't make it back to Godhead at the end of this lifetime, let me come as close as I can, because whatever progress I make, it's that much less I got to do in the future, in my next lifetime. So let me get to, if I can't get to, whatever it is, 100% Krishna consciousness or whatever percent is required to go back to Godhead, let me at least get to, 67%. So in the next life, I'll start at 68, like that. That's an important thing. And remembering, Rome wasn't built in a day. As we just mentioned, we've been in this material world for many, many Brahma's lives have come, and still we are conditioned. So we should just try to take advantage of as much as possible of every moment to try to make advancement in Krishna consciousness. This morning I was, when I was chanting, at one point I was just reflecting at, wow, in general, on the average, I sleep like 6.5, 7 hours. And I was just thinking, like, what a waste. And why? What a shame. It's like I can't do anything about it. Well, I could try, but it's kind of, I felt like for a few moments, I was feeling like I'm being robbed. I'm being ripped off, Here, I got this human form of life, and I'm being forced to waste, say, on the average, 7 hours a day of that life sleeping. and nothing is accomplished. Prabhupada actually would say, like I said, actually all the entire time spent sleeping is a waste of time. Of course, you know, he'd also say you got to do it and stay healthy. But in other words, we have to be conscious of time. We tend to think that we've got all the time in the world. Well, actually, we don't. We don't. We have, you know, limited amount of time. And so we should try to maximize our engagement in Krishna consciousness, being careful to utilize, you know, whatever time our body and mind is allowing us, you know, to engage in devotional service, and try to cut Maya back, you know, just try to, you know, over a period of time, just try to reduce, like Prabhupada used to say, reduce eating, reduce sleeping, like that. Try to minimize the bodily necessities of life and maximize our engagement in devotional service. And in that way, fully utilize this opportunity of the human form of life, you know, and having come in contact with a bona fide spiritual master and having the opportunity to engage in devotional service. So I think I'll stop there. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say?
Sure. Hare Krishna Prabhu, very nice to see you. I enjoyed everything that you was talking about, and it had me thinking of a couple of things. The first thing I enjoyed you talking about was, you know, the intention. My Guru Maharaj always talks about sankalpa, you know, like making sure that we have the correct intention when we're doing our japa. But then it got me thinking about, I don't know if you heard of this new app called Clubhouse, but it's like an audio like social media app where people go on and there's like different clubhouses and people talk about all kinds of things. And, you know, I was listening to one, they were talking about this book called Braiding Sweetgrass, which is a book on, it's basically a book on Sankhya philosophy, because they talk about, you know, the connection, the indigenous, native indigenous people's connection with the earth, and understanding that everything is a give and take of the earth, the reciprocity. And so, you know, I was thinking that there are old systems that do hold Sankhya philosophy as important. You know, it's just the Western world has completely it's just kind of like allowed people to dissociate from our relationship, right? Like with the world, with the earth, with Krishna. And, you know, and although the people on that app, their sankalpa, their intention was to talk about our connection with the world. It was mostly white women that was on that club specifically. And some indigenous people came in and they were mad because they weren't centering the conversation with indigenous peoples in the room. So I was thinking, you know, like, I was enjoying the conversation, being that, you know, I majored in anthropology. I was completely enjoying it. But in a way, I get what they're saying. It's like, you know, there should have been some people there that like represent what you're talking about. Okay, fine. But so their sankalpa was correct, you know, but the thing is that is sankalpa enough? Because people were really offended, you know, and it's like, is the intention of healing the earth enough, or is it that we have to do other stuff, you know? So this is what I was thinking about as you were talking. Yeah, I mean, you know, even with our chanting, we can have the intention of, I ultimately want to go back to Krishna, but is that enough, you know, when we're doing our japa, or studying the Bhagavad-gita, or, you know, listening to lectures? I find that I'm constantly refining my sankalpa, you know, I'm constantly trying to narrow it down, because over time I realized that my intentions have changed a bit, you know, and it's this whole culture of, oh my God, let's get initiated. Oh my God, let's follow this culture. And I realized that it's bigger than that, you know, it's developing a relationship with Krishna in every moment, you know. And so yeah, I mean, yeah, that's really all I got to say about that. I'm just happy that you stirred up some stuff in my head. You know, I've been thinking about that whole um, clubhouse thing that happened. It was really sad. You know, the people in there got shooken up. You know, at when they came in and spoke their speech, and um, yeah, that's it. Horrible.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, I'll try to respond to that. So here in New Dwarka, you know, our morning program is two parts. There's Mangalarti, then Tulsi Puja. And at the end of the first part, of the morning program, we recite the 10 offenses. And it's usually, I lead that little section. And I chant a verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It goes, Bahu Janma Kariyari Shravana Kirtana Tabutana Paya Krishna Pade Pramadana. If one is infested with the 10 offenses while chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, despite his endeavor to chant the holy name for many births, he will not get the love of Godhead, which is the ultimate goal of his chanting. So, and then I say, so there are 10 offenses, we can recite them together. And the first offense is to blaspheme the devotees who've dedicated their lives to propagating the holy name of the Lord. So this, if I understood kind of where you were, you know, the drift of what you were saying, the gist of what you were saying was that, yeah, you know, sankalpa is there. We're chanting, we're trying to make spiritual advancement, but there's the first offense. You have to do it in such a way that you're not blaspheming the devotees who've dedicated their lives to propagating the holy name of the Lord. So in one sense, it's not enough. Yet it is enough to have a sankalpa or a determination to advance, but it has to be done in a certain way. And that was one guideline, you know, it's given there in that offense. You have to do it in such a way that you're being very respectful to all the other devotees. In other words, it's you know, if you're just like bullheaded determined and you're offending all, you know, devotees left, right, and center, then despite the fact that you're determined and you have a sankalpa, you're not going to make advancement. You're not going to get, you know, the love of Godhead, which is the ultimate goal of the chanting, because you're committing those offenses. So yeah, we have to take a step back sometimes and you know, make sure that we're connecting with ourselves initially, and then others, like particularly devotees who we're, you know, interacting, living with, and doing this whole thing with on a regular daily basis, connecting with them not just on a spiritual level, although that's absolutely essential to be connecting with each other on a transcendental level, meaning like sharing Krishna Katha, you know, not being offensive, trying to serve the other devotees, etc. But even just connecting on a human level is important. You know, just like being friendly, smiling at somebody, hello, good morning, how are you? How's everything? You know, that's important. Connecting on a human level, and then even connecting like on a biological level. Sometimes, you know, are you warm enough? You know, is the room warm enough, or should I open a window? Or all these things, it all counts. It's all part of it. And yeah, it's not a you know, going for spiritual life is not something that it's not, how do I say it now? It's not like everything else in life doesn't make any difference. It's all part of it. It's all part of the program. Like as I said, for instance, for me, something I like to do because it just helps me remember the rest of my life is I actually like to chant. I chant a little bit in the temple room, but I like to go outside in the morning, and I like to chant in a place where it's actually away from the temple room, and where I can, you know, get some fresh air and just clear out my head a little bit, and then I come back with a fresh new perspective. So anyway, it all fits in there. You know, it's like Prabhupada himself. You know, Prabhupada he was a Paramahamsa, but Prabhupada went out for a morning walk every morning for the body. You know, he did that, you know, for the purpose of you know, his health, and he had 2 massages every day. He had a massage in the just before lunch, and like almost, it was more like a wrestling match when Prabhupada had a massage. Really, you know, he wasn't like just like a little few rubs. And then he had another more gentle massage in the evening before he went to bed. And they lasted like each an hour plus or minus each one on average. So, you know, you could say, well, why is the pure devotee doing that? Well, you know, isn't that a waste of time? Or, well, I mean, Prabhupada didn't seem to think so. He, you know, I mean, he was a Paramahamsa and he understood the entire philosophy. Somebody could quote the verse and say, hey, well, you know, doesn't it say that what we just heard that Tashyeva Hito Prayateta Kovido, that, oh, we didn't, no, Prabhupada didn't quote that one, but that there's no point in endeavoring for material happiness, because whatever you're destined in terms of the stress, just like the stress comes of its own accord, happiness is going to come of its own accord. So if it's going to come of its own accord, why do you have to bother, you know, to exercise, to be healthier? But anyway, Prabhupada did it. So there must be another element there in the understanding of the whole thing. So anyway, yes. So sankalpa is important. You got to have the sankalpa, but I think you have to have sankalpa with sensitivity to each other, you know, other devotees, and even sensitivity to yourself. Don't sankalpa yourself to death. That might sound weird, but you know, you can do that. Don't be so determined that you have to. It's just like when you're driving a car. Sometimes, you know, there's warning lights, there's signals you get when something's going wrong, and you got to pay attention to those. So in the same way, if you're too sankalpad, sometimes you can kind of push yourself too much, and it's going to be counterproductive. I had that experience. I'll share this with you, okay? At one point, probably, let's see, 48, more like 45 years ago, I got right into memorizing verses. And I was doing it to the point where I was just I actually devised some sort of system, you know, by just remembering the first letter of a word. I would remember the word, and then I was, you know, making like code. Anyway, I just pushed my mind so much to memorize these verses, and I was memorizing a lot of verses, but because I was just pushing myself so much, at some point my mind just balked. It was just like, I just said, no, stop, no more. And I just stopped for years. See? So rather than, you know, push so much, don't be so sankalpa that you're not sensitive to what, you know, how your own mind and body is responding to that, and other people are responding to. You have to be sensitive to yourself and other people, and you have to do it in a way that's user friendly to yourself and to you know, those who you're associating with, you know, in your community and your sangha and your group of devotee friends. I probably gave this example before, like in general, there's different ways of, you know, sort of going about trying to progress in something. I gave this example of zones. You know, there's the comfort zone, the stretch zone, and the strain zone. So my idea is, my understanding is to do things in the stretch zone. If you do things in the comfort zone, you don't make any progress. You're not disturbed, and nobody else around you is disturbed, but because you're just taking it too easy on yourself, you don't make really any progress. When you do things in the strain zone, you can get a lot accomplished for a while, but then eventually it backfires. Like with another example I gave you, you know, you're going to be disturbed. You're going to disturb others around you, or you'll be disturbed yourself, and then the long-term result will be no, you know, you don't really make the kind of progress you could make if you just did it in the stretch zone. Like, for instance, I mean, I was into, using myself as an example again, I was into memorizing verses, and I memorized a bunch of verses. But if I would just memorize, say, one verse a week, I've been in the movement, say, let's just round it off to 40 years, okay? So that's 2,000 verses, you know, 50 weeks in a year, rounding it off again, 4 times 40 years. I don't know 2,000 verses, you know, maybe I know like 250 verses. I mean, 1/10. See, but if I would have just been more in the stretch zone and the mode of goodness about the whole thing, and learned one verse a week, which is, you know, that's not hard. You really could do that. That's like not that difficult. I know 2,000 verses by now. So anyway, we have to try to be, as I said, sensitive to and watching, you know, yourself and others, and seeing how's it, is this, you know, and re-evaluating and then reevaluating, how's this working? I'm doing this. Is it working? How do I feel? How do I perceive others around me are feeling about what I'm doing? Is everything kind of user-friendly? You know, are we happy campers? Am I a happy camper? Are they happy campers? And then, you know, make adjustments if necessary. Maybe not. Maybe it won't be necessary to make adjustments, but everything is, but, you know, it may be. So be open to that. Be open to, you know, reviewing and reevaluating what, you know, your the ways in which you're trying to make progress in devotional service, and make adjustments if necessary. So I hope that's kind of like touching upon where you were coming from and the kind of points you were trying to make.
Yes, yes, it is. Thank you, Prabhu, for that.
Okay.
That's some good stuff.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
So, unless I misunderstood, and maybe I did, earlier you said that you've been a devotee for going on 48 years.
No, 48 years. Yeah, right. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, and
so my math was wrong. I said 40 times 50, but I could have done 50 times 50, but okay. Go ahead, please continue.
And you did say, and again, I want to repeat again, unless I misunderstood, that it's in the last couple of months that you've gotten into this wonderful routine where you put your mat down, you put your styrofoam down, and you do your chanting, you do your japa.
Yeah.
And that it's been like something, it sounded like you hadn't experienced anything like that before, like that it's this ritual now that it comes easy to you because you put your mat down, you put your styrofoam down, and then you easily slip into your chanting. And so I find it encouraging that after 48 years, believe it or not, I find this encouraging that you're now at this point.
Okay.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Were you never at this point before?
Well, okay. So yeah, there's a background story and I'll explain it to you. Okay. Why this might sound unusual. I came from a hatha yoga background. That's how I got into Krishna consciousness.
Wait, Bhrgupati, sorry to cut you off, but when you share your story, if you don't mind, please interweave within it your discussion of how you've been going on for years and years, ecstatic long walks that are also very exhausting to someone who's not extremely fit, such as myself when I joined you in LA. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. We'll get to that too. So anyway, I come from a hatha yoga background. When I was in college, I didn't know anything about Krishna consciousness or anything, yoga, nothing. And anyway, some friends of mine got me to go to some hatha yoga class that was being offered by somebody there. And I went and I found it really amazing. You know, I was sort of like a sports addict. I played a lot of sports and I found that 45 minutes of hatha yoga that I was doing, once I surrendered and got into it, was doing more for me, my mind and my body, mostly both, than all that other stuff put together. And so I really was attached to it. And when I came to the movement, I remember when I joined in Brooklyn, middle of April, 1973, and devotees came down heavy, when not just me, but anybody they saw who had attachments to hatha yoga. If anybody was sitting in the temple room in a lotus position trying to chant japa, or if anybody had a particular, a special kind of vegetarian diet, or you get smashed. And aside from that, there was all these different statements in Prabhupada's books about how it's hatha yoga or Astanga yoga, whatever is not our system of yoga, and you're not going to be able to become self-realized like that. And that all these asanas and it's like bodily gymnastics. And anyway, so I kind of I felt guilty, because I was attached to that. I used to do it and it made me feel good. So every time I started doing something as a young devotee that bared any semblance to hatha yoga, I'd feel like my mind was just kind of slipping back into that whole other era, and I just wanted to divorce myself from that completely. So that was a big part of the reason why I didn't get into at that point in my career in Krishna consciousness, why I didn't try to dovetail my background, hatha yoga background, into Krishna consciousness, because I just felt like it was, chalk and cheese. It wasn't something that was going to help me. It was too close to home. I was too attached to that, and I liked it too much, and I kind of felt my mind was, kind of veering over to that whole, previous attachment I had. So I just cut it altogether. And I just would chant, as I said, standing, walking, or some other way, but not messing around with sitting in a half lotus or a half lotus position or like that. But I guess there's enough water under the bridge now, and I've done all that stuff for so many years that like now I feel like I'm doing it in a way that's balanced. I don't feel like I'm flipping back to my, Yogi Gupta Hatha Yoga days, before meeting the devotees. And I think I'm able to, doing it with the proper perspective that it's a means to an end. It's just, I'm using that knowledge and that ability in a way that's helping me make, progress in Krishna consciousness. And that's why it is that after 48 years, I'm just making these kind of statements. It's not that I wasn't aware of this. I was too aware of it, previously, and to the point that if I would have allowed myself to get absorbed in that, I feel it would have deviated me from, the proper execution of devotional service as per the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. I would have got too carried away into that whole thing, so I just cut myself off from it altogether, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know that I was listening. I don't know that it was answered. I mean, so you have been having ecstatic japa for many years prior to these past couple of months.
Well, yeah, I feel this is what I'm doing now. I like the best. I mean, as Atmani Vedana was mentioning, I used to go on japa walks, and I really enjoyed that too. But this is the best program I feel like I've got to date, and because, well, I mean, I'm getting a bit older, so I don't, and my service involves walking a lot as well, so I don't have unlimited energy. So I find in the morning, if I could conserve that energy, the physical energy, for later in the day, that's helpful, and this enables me to do that. Because sitting down in that position, as I described and read, it really, no energy. I mean, I feel like if anything, I'm getting energy by sitting like that, and then I just try to focus everything on the chanting, and then when I'm finished with that session, I don't feel fatigued. I feel like energized. I feel ready to go. I feel ready for the rest of the day. Whereas a lot of time when I was doing that other program of walking a lot, it was invigorating, but a lot of time at some point it started taking a lot of energy, and I'd have to rest and take a nap before or something, to be ready to go out there and do more physical exercise. So I'm just kind of like trying to, what's the word?
Find your japa home.
Well, that and conserve energy that I'll need for later on in the day when it's absolutely required. Because for japa, it's not absolutely required. It's not absolutely required. If you got limited resource, you want to make sure you have it for the what you really need it for. So now my energy is kind of more limited. So I need that physical energy for during the day for the other activities I'm performing. So therefore, I'm not trying to conserve it during the japa time when I can accomplish that. I can achieve that without using that energy. And so anyway, it's working pretty well. Does that make sense?
That was very clear. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Can I just add something and
please.
Just to clarify something. So I noticed like what you're saying is your preference, right? Like for instance, I sometimes in the beginning of my japa, I sit down for 1 hour, right? And after 1 hour, I feel like my legs are tired and my mind is racing, it's going all over the place. So I get up and then I pace around in my room. That gives me some sort of like, it releases the strain in my legs, and it makes japa more, I'm able to concentrate on the holy name than just my bodily pains, right? So what you're saying is, can we take it that this is what works for you? It's not a generalization, right? Because I mean, the feeling that I get is like, maybe people are not getting you really well. Maybe when you say that sitting down is the best, it might be for you, but then it's not for everybody, and we shouldn't make it like a generalization so that people might think that. I mean, over the years, over 48 years, I think we cannot just judge your being able to sit down and chant peacefully. We can't use that as a yardstick to judge your devotional credit that you have gotten. Is that something?
No, I agree 100%. The goal, as mentioned here, Prabhupada said that the goal is to concentrate the mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he does acknowledge that sitting like that can be helpful. But once again, the goal, different strokes for different folks. And that's been my experience, that, as different points in my career or trying to become a devotee, different things have worked. And maybe, what's working now wouldn't have worked 20 years ago. And what was working 20 years ago doesn't work now. So yeah, you got to make adjustments and do what's going to enable you to concentrate your mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead best. And if it's sitting, great. And if it's walking, great. And if it's whatever it is, but that's the objective, to concentrate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which means concentrating on the mantra. So whatever it takes to be able to do that best, that's the best way to be, that, for you to be chanting.
Yeah.
Can I say, Bhrgupati? What I take from Bhrgupati's Prabhu's very informative and enlivening and expert in figuring out how the mechanics of Krishna consciousness, what I take from it on this particular point, this particular point that people are asking questions about, is this is what's enlivening for Bhrgupati, and also what works for his psychophysical nature today. But he's also what I particularly liked about his point was he was drawing out from the Bhagavad-gita to show how the Bhagavad-gita recognizes there's good things that you can utilize from different paths in life to facilitate or augment or to facilitate and improve or to help you to engage in the highest path of all, which is bhakti yoga. Because of course, there's actually no material impediment to Krishna consciousness. And the corollary to that statement, I guess you could say conversely, there's actually no material thing that really enables you to be Krishna conscious either. But there are certain things, but as long as we're identifying with the material body and we're in it, you can use different techniques to help you to deal with your tendencies as an embodied soul, so that then you can focus on what's spiritual, which is actually beyond the body, beyond your physical postures. And then I just wanted to add, so that's what I thought that was really interesting and really, really helpful. But also Bhrgupati is so good about sharing his personal experiences. I wanted to also just add, of course, Srila Prabhupada, who is indisputably the greatest devotee that any of us sort of can ever have, experience with. He liked to chant japa while walking often. so we can't. So it just proves the point. Both work. Prabhupada is in his books. He's glorifying this particular way of sitting while chanting, and he loves to chant while walking on occasion. So that sort of proves the point too. And then there's one other point I wanted to make, which sort of supports or is an example of something that about the point we were just hearing, how, you know, there's different strokes for different folks in the practice of Krishna consciousness, but also, as Bhrgupati said, within his own career, spiritual career, different strokes for himself at different times within his career. And I was just thinking, and for myself, I noticed, you know, for the years that I lived in the temple, it was sort of, for me anyway, it was sort of the fast track within my career of Krishna consciousness, because it was sort of like when Bhrgupati was, you know, jamming all those verses, transcendental verses, but one day his mind gave up. But during my years in the temple, it was super, super intense for me. That's how those years were for me. For some people, they're not, but for me, they were. And so I noticed that I had different phases in various aspects of my life, spiritual life within the temple, or practice of Krishna consciousness in the temple, including different phases of how I chanted japa. And I noticed that there were some periods of time where I would like to take walks outside. Like when I lived in the Boston temple, I would love to take walks in the Boston Gardens, but there's a public gardens if you don't know it. And I would love, you know, it's a 3-minute walk or something from the temple. So I'd love that. And I would do that every morning when it was nice weather. And sometimes there would be a Prabhupada disciple or something who was in town who would just sort of nod at me. And that meant it was time for us to go for our japa walk together in the park. It was just the routine. I remember that was Mahavirya, who's himself had different phases of how he's engaged in spiritual life over the years. But I remember then it was awesome. And then there were times when I would like to chant most of my rounds before Mangalarti, and I would chant in one spot back and forth across the temple room right in front of where Prabhupada was. But then I would, and I was really attached to that. But then a devotee who was more senior than me, when he came back to town, I realized that was his spot. And so then I had to give up my attachment. And I thought, wait, how am I going to be ecstatic chanting japa in the morning? Because this is where I do it. That I need that to chant good japa. I found somewhere else to go, and I almost forgot that was my spot. And there was then I found somewhere else where I got real ecstatic. There was another phase where I had some of my most ecstatic chanting, where I would stand in one location, and some people thought I was a little, zany because I was very intense. But I remember there was one phase where I would stand facing a wall, and on in the Boston Temple Room, I don't know if some of you know it, there's mantles over faux fireplaces. I believe they're faux, at least now no one's using them. And I would put my sheet, the printed sheet of the 16 words of the Hare Krishna mantra, all in caps, in an 8x11 sheet, 8x11 inches. And I at some point in time, I had that framed. At one point, I laminated it and took it with me on our Sankirtan van, and we would post it on the wall. And I depended on that. And I would stare at when I was in the temple room, I would put the sheet over the mantelpiece, and it was a little awkward. So my face has to sort of bend down, I guess, look at it. But anyway, I would just stand all 16 rounds, and I'd move my right and left legs, my legs back and forth, my left leg moving to the right, my right leg moving to the left, back and forth, almost like when devotees are dancing in kirtan. Yeah. And if I got real ecstatic and maybe more zany than I was already, than the zaniness that was already being exuded by what I was doing, then there'd be a little dancing mixed in there with what I was doing. And I'd be intensely chanting while my eyes were glossing over every word of the mantra. But it would be real ecstatic for me because it would really help me to focus my mind on the holy name. But there's so many techniques But the important thing is, whatever the technique is, are you really hearing the holy name or not? And, so I would, and there's some times in my life where I'm better at that than other times. But, whatever, going back to how Bhrgupati resolved the issue, whatever works. Whatever works to hear the holy name is the point. Sorry, okay, back to you.
Yeah, that verse by Rupa Goswami. How's it go? Yena tena prakarena mana Krishna devasaya. That in the beginning, one has to somehow or another, yena tena, somehow or another fix the mind upon Krishna, and then all the ability to follow all the other rules and regulations will automatically follow. So that's the principle that is enunciated by Rupa Goswami. I know somebody that chants their best japa lying down, believe it or not. I can't do it, but anyway, this person seems to be able to do it. And they claim that's their best position. Anyway, anybody else have anything they'd like to share with us or ask about?
It's so funny what Mahaprabhu was just saying. It had me thinking about one time at Mongol Arti in New Jersey. When everyone to do their japa, all the men are like pacing back and forth, and the Matajis were like sitting there, but I needed to walk because I was not used to being up so early. So I'm trying to walk, and they're not giving me any room. They're like, this is ours, and I just kept doing it. And then after a little while, some more Matajis got up and started walking too, and we got some space for ourselves. And I just thought that just reminded me of that. I don't think I've ever said that out loud. It was just like a mental thing.
Good for you.
It was a mental thing. Well, I came from a different culture, so I was just like, hey, I need this, I need a walk, and it's cold outside, and I got to do this, and yeah, it's kind of crazy. I was also thinking about something. I was thinking about how I've never absolutely surrendered to the Maha Mantra until I was in labor. When I was in labor, I played the Maha Mantra, I chanted the Maha Mantra, and usually when I'm in pain, I stay clear of chanting. But in that time, the Maha Mantra was the only thing that liberated me, that made me feel safe. So I think that was a shift for me, because usually when I'm going through hard times, it's hard for me to stay close to the holy name. But that shifted everything for me. Absolutely shifted everything for me. And I think that's just interesting how through times of your life, things shift, and now the Maha Mantra is something very different for me now than it was before.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they'd like to?
Subi, I think, has a story. Okay. Subi, what if you just stand over here? Okay. She'll tell it next time.
Oh, okay. No problem. All right. So should we move on to the next part there, or just chanting and finishing up? Or
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. I think there's all these messages from everyone in Bhrgupati. A lot of people are like super happy with this discussion and the class. They're really happy.
Good. The devotees are happy. It's a success.
Right.
Okay. Well, and with the kirtan, huh?
Yeah. So remember, if you like, you can chant in your home or wherever you're sitting or standing, and even though you're muted, and then in response to Bhrgupati, each mantra, it makes the kirtan more lively, even though we're not in the same room together. Okay.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvashesha Sunyavadi Vaskatadeshatarine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvashesha Sunyavadi Vaskatadesha Tarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Nittai Gaura Haribo Nittai Gaura Haribo Nittai Gaura Haribo Nittai Gaura Haribo Go Pramanandi Hari Haribo
Haribo. So if devotees here would like to unmute yourself and join me in expressing appreciation to His Grace Bhrgupati Prabhu, we can do it now. His Grace Bhrgupati Prabhu ki jai.
Thank you.
Haribol. Thank you.
Thank you.